Okay, I'm great now.
This is Resident of Collinwood. I'm here joined by at I under slash Barnabas. We're here to discuss the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and I want to thank him for joining me. This was sort of a spur of the moment thing.
Oh, I'm enjoying it. I'm glad to be back. And to everybody listening, whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
That's right. A classic line by Heather Langenkamp.
Oh, yeah.
But I gotta ask you, man, what got you into A Nightmare on Elm Street?
Actually, believe it or not, the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie that I ever saw was the remake.
Hmm.
I never had seen the original. I think we talked about it once before in the Halloween uh, retrospect episode that we did. I sort of got into horror movies a little bit late, so I had a lot of catching up to do. With the hype of the remake, I had never seen the original, and I saw the remake, and there were some good things to it. You know, it was okay, but it really wanted me to go back and made me want to go back and watch the original and see the source material. And I'd seen Freddy Krueger, for years and years, and I never saw any of the movies. So um, the remake really got me into wanting to watch the original 1984 movie and so on, and watch the sequels. So it's and the same can be said, with a lot of fans of the Dark Shadows 2012 movie. I've heard a lot of stories about how that movie got them into the original series, and Nightmare on Elm Street had that effect on me. So it got me into the original movies that came before.
Do you, when you saw the remake, what were your thoughts on them taking the film in a darker, I would say I know we're jumping way ahead into the remake, but I do want to do
That's
this
okay.
because it was the first one you saw.
Right.
Um, it was what were your thoughts? It was a very darker version of I would dare say the previous entries.
hmm Um, I liked it and I appreciated it in some ways because I thought it was kind of a tense movie. How like one thing that I really did like about the remake was the whole concept of like the micro naps,
Mhm.
and how Freddy was pretty scary in this movie, and I was used to just like seeing different commercials and so much other stuff when Freddy Krueger became a celebrity and became known for his puns and everything. So seeing um, something totally different that really took me by surprise, and I thought that Jackie Earl Haley did a pretty good job as Freddy, and I still do. The one thing that I didn't like about the remake was how they did something different than the original, and they made and confirmed that Freddy was the child molester. Um, I thought that was an odd direction kind of to take, and um, like I said, I'd heard a lot about Freddy Krueger, but that was something that I'd never heard, that in any of the movies that he was a child molester, and I thought going that angle, um, it really took it to some dark places and crossed some boundaries, and I don't know. I enjoyed the parts with Freddy, but the remake kind of lost me at that point when they confirmed that he was the child molester and they were really going that way. So at that point, I kind of jumped off the train.
There's an interview Robert Englund gives um,
hmm
when they address this with him, and he said,
Right.
well, and he said, well, Freddie, no, it's never really said in the original movies. That's correct. But he does say Freddie was originally intended to be a child molester, and
Correct.
and
Correct.
I will say, like, and we're going to get into the older movies.
Hmm.
there's hints of that in the older movies. You know, there's not
Right,
they they don't come right out and say he was a child molester. They say child murderer.
right.
You know, and that's I think you know it's always I sort of said this with Season of the Witch when I was doing my retrospective for Connell Cochran.
Oh, I love that video, by the way.
Thank you. It's always sometimes it's when you're introduced to something. You know, it's so characters can be hard to take in. Not just Freddy. Um, One of the characters I had a hard time with, like growing up, because I was again he's my favorite actor, was Henry Fonda. And
Yeah,
when he turned heel in a movie, I had a hard time with it at first. So you know, it's again, you're used to seeing some. Again, that's an actor playing a long time career though. So
right,
again, it's all in when we see something and how we look at it. It's not a wrong way of looking at things at all. It's
right.
just it can either shake us to our core the way you know Freddy does, being confirmed he's a child molester, but gosh, I got people tinning me up, but they,
That's okay.
you know, but I just think it comes at a point of when you're introduced to Freddy, but then, like you said, you went back, and I do want to hear about that going back. Like,
Mhm.
what were your thoughts on that? Like, starting with the original.
The original,
Mm.
I love the original 1984 movie. I thought that it was such a cool, interesting twist. I mean, and this isn't knocking any of the other movies like Halloween, but I really thought the imagination of a killer that chases you in a dream world was really, really creative and something very, very original because, Halloween definitely started the trend of the slashers and home invasion. And as you know, like in the 80s, there were so many people trying to make the next Halloween and
Mm-hmm.
start a franchise. And then you have Friday the 13th and My Bloody Valentine. But
Mm-hmm.
I thought that holding someone in a dream world and stalking them there was something very dark and invasive about that because that's coming into someone's own personal headspace and their own private thoughts. And I thought that was a really, really cool um, way to bring in a murderer, because in a dream world there are no boundaries. There's crazy stuff that happens in everyone's dreams, and the thing is, you like in a lot of situations, you learn about safety. Don't talk to strangers. Don't do this. I mean, we all learn about safety
Mm-hmm.
and how to control environments, but a bodily function like sleep is something you can't control. So you're at the mercy of this killer, and it's in a territory that is absolutely unfamiliar where there are no rules. And I thought that was such a fantastic environment and a great setup to a horror movie, was to have someone stalking you in your dreams and you can't necessarily get away from them. So I really fell in love with the premise of the original Nightmare on Elm Street. I thought that Robert Englund was a great villain. Um, how he could change shapes and shape shift in the dreams, and how, to begin with, he had an MO when he would, you know, move in on that old urban legend, like if you die in your sleep, you die for real. When he would kill people in their sleep, it always set them up to look like a suicide or look like someone else killed that person. So I thought that was just, there were so many great ideas that were coming out in that original movie, and I absolutely fell in love with it and the whole premise of it. How about yourself?
I really enjoy the original myself. I think the original. I agree with you. The imagination they used behind the killer, it doesn't get
Hmm.
any more imaginative than killing someone in their sleep. because,
Right.
as you've alluded, there's no rules, and you can do, I mean, literally everything. And
Right.
I gotta call something here on him a little bit. It sort of reminded a lot in some ways, not a lot. It reminded me of Angelique's Dream Curse, and
Right.
it really did. But other than, they had a killer who was constantly stalking you instead of a witch. But
Hmm.
I do feel with Freddy there was just he he knew. That's what I say. Freddy, for as evil and sadistic as he knew, I'm going to get away with this
Yeah.
because no, who's going to believe these kids? And
Right.
that's another thing I loved about it too, was who's going to believe some teens when they say this guy's trying to kill me in my sleep? The
Right.
you're sort of right there. You felt sorry for the teenagers right away, and Robert Englund really played to that so well.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And I love the, sort of like a bit of a social commentary in this, like between, the relationships between the parents and the kids, and
Mm.
um, the parents not listening to their kids, and that was a great bit of tension to add to that movie as well. I thought that was really really done well.
Yeah, I love how Nancy's mother is this alcoholic woman who's in denial. She,
Hmm.
you know, oh, Rod killed Tina, and Nancy's like, no, Nancy doesn't believe it, and
Hmm.
that's something I want to touch on. You, what were your thoughts? We're not introduced to Freddy through Nancy. We're introduced to Freddy through Tina. What were your thoughts on that?
I thought that was a really really cool. A cool twist. It really took me by surprise because, like I said, I didn't know anything about the original character. So I was watching this with fresh eyes, and I was thinking that Tina was going to be the main character. And where it opens up with her nightmare, I thought that she was going to be the one that was going to be stalked. And when she dies, and I have to say that her death is my favorite in the whole Nightmare franchise. Her death is absolutely brutal, and the way she screams, and oh my gosh, it gets me every time. Um, I was totally surprised that she was the first one to go. That completely took me by surprise.
I enjoyed the goat in the
Hmm.
opening
Oh yeah.
sequence, and it was just like there's a goat in this woman's dream. Why is she dreaming of this goat?
Exactly.
But
Exactly, and all the sheep, and of course, I mean, you've got to bring up the dot matrix New Line Cinema logo that it starts out with. They were That company was such a baby. I love it. I love it.
yeah, I mean, New Line Cinema, it is claimed as the house that Freddy built, and I don't disagree with
Hmm.
that.
I don't either.
I think that the first Nightmare on Elm Street launched New Line Cinema, and it launched this creative killer. And we got to mention, hey, it introduced Johnny Depp to many,
That's right. Yep.
many people. What were your thoughts on his, you know, introduction into the industry, into, well, the slasher genre, really?
I thought it was cool because that's the only time I've ever really seen Johnny Depp play just a normal person. Um, it was so weird not seeing him like with makeup on and
Hmm.
um, like white makeup, Edward Scissorhands, um, the Mad Hatter, and all these things that he's done. Uh, Sweeney Todd.
Hmm.
It was so different and so cool seeing him just as a normal teenager, and of all people, a jock. I would never ever picture Johnny Depp as a football playing jock. So that was kind of funny seeing that, but I thought it was neat having him in there. I really liked his character of Glenn a lot. I thought he was pretty funny.
I really enjoyed, the when he gets sucked into the bed.
Oh yes.
I'm your boyfriend now. Like oh shit, you know,
Yeah.
you know,
Nancy knew that something was happening to him
yeah,
at that moment when Freddie called. Oh yeah.
yeah. I I'll give you a recommendation if you haven't seen it. The original series, well, it's not. It was made into a movie with different people, but the series of 21 Jump Street. Um,
Yeah,
Johnny
I've
Depp
we have
is.
that on DVD, and my wife has seen it, but I've not seen that yet.
If you want to really see Johnny Depp as a normal, really a normal character, that is definitely one to sit down with your wife and
Hmm.
watch. I
Okay,
highly
cool.
recommend it.
Okay.
But a lot of good performances, not just by Depp. There are just a lot of really good characters in that show. But
Yeah.
for Nightmare on Elm Street, what did you think of them taking this? They were sort of somewhat using a nursery rhyme too with the killer. You know, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. Like,
Oh yeah.
what were your thoughts on that? Just
I thought that was creepy, especially when anytime for me you have little kids singing a creepy nursery rhyme, you've got me hook, line, and sinker. I thought that was a really really cool thing to add to the creep factor of this, having the little kids jumping rope and singing this nursery rhyme about Freddy, and I love the piano theme. It's very simple. Not as I mean, of course, it's not as iconic as Halloween, but I like the little piano theme that goes to that same tune of Freddy Krueger in the movie. I thought it was really good.
yeah, I really the soundtrack and just the things they did with this, like just the whole series was interesting and really
Hmm.
good. What were your thoughts on them bringing in Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, instead of a female protagonist, we get a male protagonist.
I was really okay when I watched Nightmare on Elm Street 2. I I was really disappointed because to this day Nancy Thompson is my favorite final girl in horror, and I'll just talk about it was because I loved how she not only chose to fight Freddy, and she set up like all these Rambo traps and things in the house in a matter of minutes, but how she chose to face him and go into the dream world and find a way to pull him back out and stop him. And then we get Jesse, and I was hoping that Nancy would come back when I watched the second one, and okay, for me, Nightmare 2 is my least. I That's my least favorite of the Nightmare series, and um, if anyone listening, before you jump to conclusions, I know what the purpose of the movie was about, and it's has nothing to do with homophobia. I really didn't like any of the characters. It seemed to be uh, a little bit more about um, exploding birds and different gags like that, and Jesse doing his dance in his bedroom, and I didn't really like him much about as a character. I felt he was very weak, and he didn't have the guts that Nancy had. He was just very much a victim, where Nancy, I felt like she refused to be the victim and was willing to do whatever she could to save her friends as much as she could, and not only to save them but to find a way to fight Freddy back. I just felt Jesse was just absolutely weak, and I was really disappointed in that movie. Um, as far as the main protagonist, I just felt like compared with Nancy, Jesse just didn't do it for me.
Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, sort of starts a weird trend in the franchise. And it doesn't
Mhm.
really take place in 3, but it does take place in
Right.
sort of like 5, Dream Child, that Freddy is trying to possess Jesse. And I mean,
Right.
that's what it is. And
Mhm.
so my thing, and it's because he's in the house, they're living in the house Nancy Thompson's family lived in. And
Right.
so there's a lot of, two has a lot of one feel to it. My favorite part of two
Mhm.
was when Robert England's driving the bus, and it is Robert England.
Same.
Right,
I
right.
did enjoy that. I thought that was great, and that got me really excited at the beginning of the movie before things kind of soured for me. I loved the bus, the whole school bus scene. I thought that was amazing and such a good scene.
I do feel where they needed to do more with Jesse was he had this girlfriend who he was supposedly in love with, and that was supposed to
Yeah.
sort of be his counteract for sort of battling Freddy.
Right.
My issue with this movie is this: they don't do enough of it in they don't do enough of a sort of their relationship. Now they don't have sex, but it's more sort of sexual innuendo, I'll say. It's not
Right.
so much based off love. It's okay, maybe they are in love, maybe they aren't. You're sort of left up to your own conclusion, and it really isn't answered. I think they
Mhm.
should have. I get what they were doing, the possession angle, and you do too.
Mhm.
But
Right.
they did need to focus on those two characters' chemistry a lot more. But they had other
Mhm.
characters in the film who were. I'll say this: there's movies that have what I call kill bait characters,
Mhm.
and a lot of Nightmare on Elm Street Part Two is
Yeah.
full of kill bait characters.
Exactly.
I don't
Exactly.
hate the movie for that, but if all you're gonna do is I've said if all you're gonna do is wipe the slate clean of a lot of your characters, that then
Mhm.
don't really bother to explain them to me because I'm not gonna care if they're dead. Um,
Exactly.
no offense,
Exactly.
no offense, but so that's sort of my. I don't hate Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy's Revenge as much as you do a little bit, but I do have my. I have somewhat of an issue that they didn't do enough. What I'll say, focal points of the characters, of the proper
Yeah.
characters.
I
So,
I see that. I see that.
but we'll jump to a really good Nightmare on Elm Street movie, the apology
Mhm.
movie I call it, the Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors,
Oh yeah.
which is the return of Nancy Thompson. Heather Langenkamp returns in this,
Mhm.
and one of my favorite Friday Nightmare on Elm Street Park girl in this is Patricia Arquette, and
Mhm.
a very
Kristen Parker's such a great character.
yep. I think I would love to see her come back. I know
Mhm.
they killed her character off in it wasn't her playing it in 4, but um,
Right.
I would love to see them write that character back somehow. But it probably will never happen. But what were your thoughts on Dream Warriors?
I had heard a lot about this. I had some friends that were into horror movies. At the time, I was working at Walmart, and I had some friends that talked horror movies all the time, and um, I loved talking with them because they were excited. When I would tell them that I'd watch this movie, they were excited to talk to me about it. But I tried not to talk to them too much because there was one guy that loved to spoil the next movie. He's like, "Wait till you see this happen and this happen." So I was really hyped about this one because they said, in their opinion, it was the best one, and I thought it's going to be hard to beat that original. So I'd say this is definitely a very worthy sequel that, in my opinion, comes very close to that. I thought it was a great ensemble cast, and I thought it was a great notion to have people have powers and abilities in their dreams. Because, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but I know sometimes in your dreams you have different abilities and things. You have dreams where one dream you may be able to fly, you may be really strong, or whatever. And I thought it was cool to bring that into a movie and find them uh, a way to, with everyone having different powers and different abilities, different talents and personalities, to bring them all together to fight against Freddy in the dream world. That's really a step up, uh, and building very well on the foundation that was laid with the 1984 movie.
I do like how they actually introduced Hypnocell in this movie. And
Hmm.
Hypnocell comes a big deal in Freddy versus Jason. So,
Right,
I mean, they sort of reference. I mean, what they don't say the word Dream Warriors in Freddy versus Jason, obviously, but that's referencing
right.
the movie 101 right there. Um,
Hmm.
and I've always enjoyed. I always say, well, that's straight from Dream Warriors is Hypnocell because Nancy has a bottle of
Hmm.
it. Um,
That's right.
I love that. I love the fact that they got her and the guy who played her dad in one to come back. Um, there's just a lot of. I think three, I would say, has the best cast. No offense to one,
Hmm.
just
No, no, I completely agree.
it
I
just
completely agree.
I really enjoy Dream Warriors to death. I can't just everybody having a power, and I love my favorite sequence is the junkyard sequence when her father and that guy go to where Freddy's bones
Neil, yeah.
are buried. I thought that
Hmm.
was creepy.
I did too, and I love the stop motion of Freddy, and I really liked. Okay, a couple of things I really loved about Dream Warriors that they did. Uh, you were talking about the cast. Everyone is very relatable,
Hmm.
and they struggle with everyday problems. Like, I loved Taryn. She was someone that struggled with drug addiction, and she was doing what she could to, you know, overcome it and stay clean. Kincaid, gotta love Kincaid and that sass, man. Kincaid, had different like anger problems and things that he struggled with. Everybody had something very relatable, and that you know you get an audience together in a theater, and there's so many people that can relate to these characters, and they're so um, down to earth and just regular people, and they write each one of them very well, and I love those characters. And the second thing I love that Dream Warriors did was how they established Freddy as kind of like a Catholic evil, where they had to use holy water on um, on hallowed ground and find the bones and pour holy water on them. And just like introducing him as a Catholic evil, I thought was kind of a neat direction that only this movie really ever does, and the other sequels kind of forget. But I thought that was kind of cool having him set up that way as a villain.
I always go back to Dream Warriors, especially because we know his mother was a nun, and
Right.
it definitely, you know, it made sense, that
Oh.
they would have used holy water to destroy his bones. So, and I'm with you. The cast in this, every character, these aren't kill bait characters. These are investment characters, and
Hmm.
some of the best investment characters you'll ever see in a franchise. It's just like holy, like are you actually going to kill any of these? Because they're all really good.
Right.
Who do you, it's sort of who do you kill in this because they're all interesting.
They are. They are. And I love Penelope Sudrow, her character that wanted to be the actress, and having her falling asleep and watching Zsa Zsa Gabor,
Yeah,
and and then Freddie just getting Zsa Zsa Gabor, and then that his great line, "Welcome to prime time." That was such a great improv, such a good kill. I love that part.
yeah. I think they have a NECA of that actually out. I do believe, but
They do. And there
yeah,
was even a Christmas ornament of Freddy with the TV holding that girl. I've been trying to find it on eBay, but of course it's like super rare and very expensive if you can find it.
yeah. It's collecting horror is not cheap, my friends.
It is not. It is not, and it's not fair. It's really not fair.
I said, and Black Friday does not help because while
I know.
the price goes down, everybody is online shopping as much as we are.
Exactly. Exactly. And it makes you want to buy a lot more because you're getting such great deals. It's not fair. But something about something worth mentioning. Lawrence Fishburne in this movie.
Yep.
I was surprised to see him in this movie. I liked his character a lot. I thought he was a good mediator in between the doctors seeing things the way that they saw it, as all of them having psychological problems. But I think his character really understood the kids and sympathized with them a lot and was more on their side and listened to them a lot more than the doctors did.
Lawrence Fishburne, up until this point, had played mostly street thugs, and it was
Hmm.
good to see him get something outside of it. And
Right.
I loved him in Boys in the Hood, and it just he's a really really talented actor who
Yes,
had
he
to work
is.
his way up to where he got. And again, Dream Warriors is just, again, it's so good. I feel it lived up to what the original did. Um, do I think it's better? Uh, I think for what they did with like, again, all those characters, I feel they had better characters than one. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna give the nod to one just a little bit because just everything in one goes forward in what, like, two and three. That's sort of what makes, in my view, an original hard to top, because the original was just that. It was the
Right.
original concept of it all.
Exactly. But
Uh,
I can see why so many people prefer Dream Warriors over the original
mhm.
because of this great cast and what they did with everything and how they really took what was the groundwork and really took it up a whole nother level and brought so many people facing Freddy in so many different ways in the dream world. I thought it was I thought it was such a great sequel, such a good sequel.
I think my favorite part in this is when Freddy sees Nancy for the first time again.
Yeah.
That
And
was
she just stares at us like, oh my god.
that
See,
to me,
yeah.
that was sort of better. That, like, to me, that and the Halloween H2O moment, I give the nod to Dream Warriors, because
Hmm.
Dream Warriors was sooner.
Oh
You know
yeah.
what I mean? It was, you had Heather coming back, and the chemistry was just there. So,
Mhm.
but
It was, and I never made that connection. That was a great moment in Halloween H2O when Michael and Jamie stared at each other through the glass
yep.
for the first time. That was good.
I wish they would have had her hallucinate a little more in H2O, but other
True,
other than
true.
that, like, that's one of my little complaints about, like, I wish, like, just a tad more. But what was your thoughts on Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4? Them kill. I know it wasn't Patricia Arquette playing the character, but they killed off her character.
Um, I love part four. Well, I'll say I really like part four. What keeps me from loving it was that I loved the cast in part three so much, and to see what was left of them, um, just completely swept away and done away with in the first 15 minutes, I think,
Mm-hmm.
if that,
Yeah.
um, was a real bummer. It really, really was. That keeps me from loving the movie because I wanted to see them, get back together again. Like the few that did survive, and to see that happen really upset me the first time I watched Nightmare 4. When I went back and watched it, I liked it a lot better because I had kind of gotten over it, and I liked the movie a lot more the second time and every time that I've watched it since then. Um, but I really love the character of Alice. I love Lisa Wilcox. I thought she was a really good character. Um, but I hated seeing Kristen and Kincaid and Joey being killed off so quickly. Um, it was a real disappointment. But the thing about Part 4 that I really liked was and some people, this was a bit of a turnoff for them. When I've talked to people about Nightmare 4, they really made this movie a lot more kinetic. There was, in the first three movies, there were a lot of still shots and wide angle shots, and this movie was shot a lot like an action movie. There, like in the scene back in the junkyard when Kincaid was fighting Freddy, there's a lot of like crane rotating cameras, and you could tell the budget had gone up for this movie. And this movie's a lot more kinetic. There's a lot more energy in this movie, and that, to me, that really kept me interested. And I thought it was good, but once I get over the disappointment of seeing the remainder of the Dream Warriors being killed off in Part 4, I can kind of sit back and enjoy the rest of it for what it is. Thanks to Lisa Wilcox.
My focus of 4 was when I first saw it was when I was watching this for the first time when I was like a teenager. I was like, where are you taking this? You're killing off every person in 3. So I always found it interesting, and I want to get your thoughts. This Nightmare on Elm Street always made interesting choices when it came to their protagonists, and we talked about Jesse, and we talked about Heather, and we talked about Patricia, and here's this character in Alice. We don't know her. We're just literally
Right.
introduced to her in 4. What were your thoughts on them just going a completely new protagonist again?
I thought it was kind of a neat way to, because, okay, the thing about the Dream Warriors, they were the last of the Elm Street children.
Right.
The ones that the parents, got together and had the mob and killed Freddy. So once the Dream Warriors were killed, then Freddy's thing was done. And where Kristen had the ability to pull people in dreams, she pulled Alice in, and Alice's parents had nothing to do with Freddy. And I thought it was kind of an interesting thing. Well, Freddy wanted, could he be satisfied with just killing the children of the parents that killed him, or would he want to keep on going? So when I look at it from that angle, I can see that Freddy wouldn't be satisfied in stopping there. And I think that's, true to his character, that he couldn't settle for just, doing and just seeking revenge. If he had the ability and the power to keep going, then what would stop him? So when I look at it from that angle, it kind of makes sense. Um, Alice is someone that you wouldn't think would have a whole lot of ability. She's very mousy. She doesn't have a whole lot of personality. She's very introverted. She doesn't like to look at herself in the mirror. She has a lot of self-image problems, an alcoholic father that's, plummeted her self-esteem. So I think that with the character of Alice, you have a lot of room there for someone that you want to see come out of that shell, someone that you want to see win and overcome all these challenges that she has that aren't her fault. So when I look at the premise of what they did with Alice, I can kind of go along with it. I'm satisfied with the fact that Freddy wouldn't be satisfied at stopping there once his revenge was complete. And you have this character of Alice that has so many challenges to overcome. She's just sort of an everyday person that you can relate to. I was someone that was very shy and introverted growing up in school. I didn't have a whole lot of friends. So I could kind of relate with her in that way, and kind of imprint myself with her character in some ways. So with what they did, I could go along with it. It's different, but I think it was a decent direction to take. It's really about, I don't know, I can't imagine them doing much else once Freddy's mission was complete. So I thought they did an okay job. What about you?
I think it building Alice up in this movie was done by Lisa Wilcox very well, and also by Robert Englund, because Robert Englund it's the way Freddy is killing off the Elm Street children. It's very cocky, it's very arrogant, and I think a lot of that pushes Lisa's character in the direction of where she goes without
Right.
Freddy realizing it. Freddy, and it goes throughout the Elm Street franchise, had a weird way of underestimating who he was dealing with. And Lisa's character is definitely that. She gets very underestimated until she actually makes a literal stand with Freddy. And it's a
Right.
very good stand. I'd say 4 has a very unique concept of the battle between Freddy and Alice is very, very well done.
Oh yeah. And I loved how she was able to absorb everyone's dream powers as the Dream Master.
Yep.
And I thought that was a really really cool concept, that there was someone that had the ultimate dream power, and it was someone that was, I would say, the most least likely that you'd seen in the franchise thus far, that you would think could be an absolute champion and harness all of these dream powers and accomplish what she did to combat Freddy.
What were your thoughts on the Dream Child? And they really incorporated Freddy's mother into this one as well. So, what were your thoughts on them taking where Freddy is possessing a child's dream?
Uh, I have a lot of mixed feelings about this one. Um, I felt like they were trying to. Okay, I feel like they were trying to do some new things and improve on what worked and what didn't work in the past movies. And in part two, that was mostly a possession movie, and it had less to do about nightmares. So a lot of people, I would think part two was a bit divisive, um, and I thought that the fact of having um, Lisa Wilcox's character of Alice being pregnant and Freddy um, being able to, get in her unborn children's or child's dreams. And I actually looked this up, and I've actually found that is, they say, an actual thing, that unborn children, while they're still in the womb, can dream. And I thought that was kind of a cool concept, as a way to bring Freddy in. Um, I thought the way they did it was a bit extreme, with him feeding the souls, through the umbilical cord. It's okay, but I thought they had a good premise at first, and I loved uh, I loved how, um, having a child, because Alice lost her brother Rick in part 4,
Mm-hmm.
and Alice's father was a very, very horrible character. He was an alcoholic, abusive person, and I'm sure everyone can relate to that. Everybody's had someone like that in their family,
Right.
and I mean, and it's sad, but I loved how having the turnaround of that was his saving grace in this movie, and he said, when a lot of people, especially back in the 80s, that was such a taboo subject of an unwed teen. Alice became one of the big stereotypes, and that America was afraid of was an unwed teen mother. And I thought it was just such a great way for him to say it's going to be nice to have a little boy running around the house again. And I thought that was a good arc for his character. But I think bringing Freddy's mother back in, it didn't work for me as well as it did in Dream Warriors. She seemed a little bit cryptic, like, look for me in the tower, and it's like she was leaving hints and like vague hints and stuff, not like she was really trying to help much, like she did in Dream Warriors, how she helped Neil. So I thought bringing her back was, in this way, didn't work for me as well as it did in Part 3. How about you? How did you feel about The Dream Child?
I would say 4 is a better film than 5.
Oh
And
yeah, I agree.
5 5 is more, in my opinion, 5 is more a way to explain Freddy's conception. And you can see that within the film that Freddy is, son of 100 maniacs or whatever. You know,
Oh, and you can definitely see who Freddy's dad was, with
yeah,
Robert Englund in the mix.
yeah,
Yeah, no paternity test needed there.
right, right, right. And so I feel 5 is, though is it awful? No, but
No, I don't think it's awful.
from a standpoint of what they were basically doing to me, this sort of, I'm going to touch on this where we were talking about Star Wars and how Attack of the Clones is like you got it's going through the motions.
Yeah,
That's exactly what 5 is. You're going
yeah,
through the motions.
exactly.
Like
That's great.
it
That's a great way to sum that.
it's
Absolutely.
they basically did this movie to me, and I love Lisa Wilcox too. But to me, this
Hmm.
movie was more about they were trying to tie in Freddy's past a little bit,
Yeah,
and I get it. I do, and I do appreciate things like that. But it doesn't mean it's does just because you do that from a story standpoint, it doesn't mean you have a good movie overall.
exactly.
So
Exactly. And I think that Part 3, even though it didn't go into as much detail, I think that Part 3 did a better explanation of Freddy's past. I think it connected all the dots and told you everything that you needed to know.
hmm
And I think this one, um, what what they did explain just didn't work as well for me personally.
right, and really what they had in 5, like you don't really need to be shown that you got it in 3. Like
Yeah,
you
exactly.
got like you said, you got the explanation in 3. But for whatever reason, and again, I get it. I'm all for more explanation, but when it's just sometimes more explanation isn't always needed either. So if I won't say
Right.
five's a waste, but 5 again, it's go through the motions to get to 6. But
I hope Rob Zombie listens to this, because to me that's the problem I had with his Halloween versus the original. I think that one paragraph that Donald Pleasance gave when he was talking to Sheriff Brackett, when he was saying that he saw this uh, little child with this pale, blank, emotionless face and the blackest eyes. I think that one paragraph was all the backstory that you needed for Michael, and the way that Rob Zombie did it was just way too much, and where I felt that Halloween 2007 went wrong. And I guess comparing Part 5, um, the backstory of Freddy, with all that you needed to hear in part 3. That's the connection I make between the two.
Mm.
It was just a little bit too much. I already had what I needed, and it worked great for me. So being shown more didn't move or add anything new to it for me, really, or make it any better.
You don't, with Michael Myers, you don't humanize the boogeyman. You know,
Exactly.
that's Rob's biggest sin. You know,
Yeah,
um,
I agree.
but for the final nightmare, quote air quotes, but
Freddy's dead.
yeah,
Yeah.
Freddy's dead. A cameo by Johnny Depp in this. Roseanne's in this.
Hmm.
Tom Arnold.
Tom Arnold. Yeah.
I'm gonna say something, and people usually think I'm joking when I say this. Roseanne was creepy as hell in this movie. For her little
She
lines,
was. She was.
I mean, God, she made me more scared of Freddy in that movie than Robert Englund did, and I'm like, come back.
Yeah, I know, right? She was. Um, I, I actually like Freddy's Dead better than I do 5 because, the Rachel Talalay, the director, she had been a producer and she had been there and had really, really gotten her hands dirty from the ground up since the very first Nightmare movie, and I felt that she earned that director's spot. Now, was it a great movie? No, but I think that she really tried, and she really brought a lot of things that a lot of people loved about Freddy and tried to bring it all together in one movie. And I like that, how they had a town there where, all the children were gone, and Roseanne and Tom Arnold were absolutely crazy, and how she was, like you said, she was very, very scary and just wanting to mommy any child that came their way. I mean, that's very, very creepy, and in its own way. And I think that could have, been a horror movie in itself. But I think there was a lot of love that went into Freddy's Dead from, Rachel Talalay's point of view, and I believe that she really thought that she was giving fans what they loved about Freddy, and the whole thing, 3D was such a novelty back then and such a rare thing that hadn't been, brought forward, and to want to make, Freddy in 3D, I think that was very, very ambitious, and I think, how you describe 5 as going through the motions. I think 6 was probably the most ambitious, but I don't think the budget could quite live up to that ambition.
Yeah, I'm with you on a lot of this, and the one thing I'll say this has is, though it's a lot of comedy and it has
Mhm.
very little actual horror,
True.
it has horror tones in it. You know,
Mhm.
this is a Nightmare on Elm Street movie very much. And my favorite one, in this movie, out of all the franchise, this has my favorite line in of all. And because his daughter says, "This isn't Springwood," and he says, "Every town has an Elm Street." And I love
Exactly.
that line. I use that line on my
Mhm.
sister-in-laws to death. But that's my favorite line Robert Englund ever uttered as Freddy is that line.
Mhm. Mhm. What were your thoughts on looking from the very first Nightmare movie to um, Freddy's Dead? How did you feel about Freddy becoming such a celebrity and more of, I guess, a comedian than how he started in the beginning?
It I think it's so interesting because it shows what happens when we popularize a killer, when a killer becomes so popular in a franchise. Freddy was one of the most it became one of the most, for whatever reason, beloved killers. I dare say even quicker than what Michael did. As
Yeah.
much, Michael, Michael, even like with, 2018, you can still not, Michael Myers is evil. You can't, even though you like him, but you can't love him. Um,
Right.
and that's what I'll say. Freddy was loved by the audience, and I feel it's just even in one to a degree, but not to such a large degree. Those that came in the sequels, and
Right.
again, it's sort of like what happens with real life killers. Sometimes people begin to, grow on real serial killers. So I guess art tends to imitate life sometimes.
Right. And I think that was something that Wes Craven, um, and this is a good segue into New Nightmare. I think something that Wes Craven was always bothered by. Um, I think if you watch, I'm not sure if you've ever watched the Never Sleep Again documentary, um, about the whole Nightmare franchise, but there was something that Wes said, and it really makes you think. He said that when he set out making the franchise, or the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie, he never imagined that the killer would become such a celebrity and someone that people would, the one that people would fall in love with the most, and how, people loved seeing the killer actually win and kill people. And then, like in the case of so many of the Friday the 13th movies, they make a lot of the human characters like most despicable people of all, at some points and in the later sequels. And, you couldn't wait to see Jason, hack these people and get them. And I think that that was something that Wes Craven really addressed in New Nightmare in the beginning scene when Heather Langenkamp is on the talk show, and the audience is there and they're quiet, but then all of a sudden Robert Englund comes out dressed as Freddy, and people go absolutely nuts, and you see all these people that are dressed up as Freddy Krueger, and everyone loves him. And I thought that was kind of a good, that was a good, you know way to demonstrate, I guess, take a look at society and how they romanticize the killers and are so fascinated by them. And I thought that was kind of an interesting point, to make, in a movie. And
I think Wes Craven's A New Nightmare is, it's not canon with the original, movies. And I
right.
love it for that. And I do enjoy A New Nightmare a lot. I think it has so many
Oh, me too.
real tones to it and good tones. And it's just, it takes you sort of while you're watching it through the lens, it sort of takes you behind it at the same time. And
Hmm.
so I loved how it intertwined real life with the fictional, and real world. So I've always given Wes Craven's A New Nightmare a 9 out of 10. And
Hmm.
I
I agree completely.
so what were your thoughts? They actually got Guns N' Roses to cameo in this, and I think
Hmm.
they Wes Craven had said he either didn't ask Johnny Depp or he forgot to ask Johnny Depp to appear in this.
Hmm.
That I was always
Um, I'm not sure.
so
I can't remember. I don't know if they asked him or not. I'll have to look into that, actually.
I will too. I know it was something like that, but he wasn't in A New Nightmare. But they did bring the guy who played her father back in from one, and
John Saxon,
right,
yeah.
John Saxon, who was a student of Bruce Lee's, and
Yes,
was
John Saxon's such a great actor,
mhm,
such a great guy.
was in Enter the Dragon, folks. That's one for you to go
Yes,
watch. Um,
absolutely.
but John Saxon is in this, and I just, I, to me, A New Nightmare has some of my favorite kill sequences. What were your thoughts on them?
Um, there. This movie was, I mean, surprisingly for a Freddy movie, didn't really have that many kills, but the ones that it does have are very, very memorable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I thought how um, I fell in love with this movie a lot like I did the original the first time I watched it, where I thought it was such a smart script where the actors play themselves, and so many elements actually happen, like Heather Langenkamp's stalker that kept calling her and stalked her for months and months,
Mm-hmm.
and then how she and her husband have a special effects company, and how her husband in the movie was a special effects guy and was killed uh, by Freddy. But I thought the way that they introduced this demon, although it wasn't actually Freddy Krueger, but it took the form of Freddy, was because society was so fascinated by it. It felt, it fueled that fear and the evil, and how it brought this monster, this demon, into the real world. I thought it was a really cool concept, and how he integrated it with some of the darker Grimm's fairy tales like Hansel and Gretel.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Wes Craven did a magnificent job on this one. I think this is probably one of his best stories he's ever written. I thought it was fantastic.
I really enjoy how they have Freddy look in this movie. He doesn't look like your 80s Freddy. He looks very, very dark and very dirty. He doesn't, wear the sweater. He's wearing this coat, and he's very dark. And Robert Englund, give him credit. He just sells his ass off, and so does Heather Langenkamp. Their chemistry together is something else in that movie.
I love it.
Yep.
I agree. I love it. And my my two favorite lines from the original Nightmare on Elm Street were both from Heather Langenkamp. I loved it when she was first finding out about Freddy Krueger, and she grabbed the bottle of liquor from her mom and she threw it down on the ground and said, "Screw sleep." And then when she ran into the hall monitor in the hallway, and the hall monitor was like, "Where's your pass?" And she was like, "Screw your pass." And I loved hearing her say that again to the nurse when she was wanting to. She just broke through the hospital because she wanted to see her son, and the nurse said, "You need a visitor pass." She's like, "Screw your pass." So I loved it how they tied just with a really pretty ribbon and bow, how they tied the ending of Heather having to play Nancy one last time and to battle Freddy. But I do have to say that the way she beats Freddy in New Nightmare is so satisfying. The way that she gets to talk to Freddy like she never got to talk to in the other ones, and because now that's her own kid involved, so Freddy's messing with Mama Bear. Nancy always gave Freddy a run for his money, but now that Heather is a mother, she's got Mama Bear or Freddy has Mama Bear to deal with now. So I really enjoyed the end of New Nightmare, and I thought it was such a great showdown between Nancy and Freddy.
My favorite line in A New Nightmare is when Freddy comes out of the "Miss me?"
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I think by that point, a lot of people had, because we were talking earlier about Freddy had become a jokester, and after so long, people grow up and they move on to new things, and Freddy was not as beloved in 1994 as he was in 1984 and the few years after that in the good sequels. But I definitely enjoyed seeing Freddy return to someone to absolutely be feared. I thought that was a great line.
I have a "Did you know" for you, and I don't know if you know this or not, but
Okay.
Robert Englund and Jackie Earle Haley were both villains in different episodes of the original MacGyver. Jackie Earle Haley,
Really?
right? Yep, Jackie Earle Haley was in an episode called The Last Stand, where
Uh-huh.
Richard Dean Anderson's character is taking on these. They hijacked, they're stealing money, and Jackie
Uh-huh.
Earle Haley comes out of the semi truck. He was driving the semi truck,
Uh-huh.
and Robert Englund is in an episode with a power plant in it. I forget the name of the episode now, but
Uh-huh.
um, yeah, they both play villains in different episodes of MacGyver. Um,
I didn't know. I knew that Robert Englund was in an episode, but I didn't know that Jackie Earle Haley was in an episode. That's great.
yep. Um,
That is absolutely great.
I gotta ask you this: what do you want to see if they bring A Nightmare on Elm Street back?
Definitely Heather Langenkamp.
Hmm.
I would love to see Heather Langenkamp. Um, I I would love to see Amanda Weiss, who was Tina in the original, but I don't know how they can justify bringing her back. Um, I I would like to see Heather Langenkamp back some way, and um, I would like to see a lot of the Dream Warriors come back.
Hmm.
Um, if they were somehow given another shot where they wiped a lot of the continuity like they did in Halloween 2018, how they started over with a blank slate somewhat from the original. I would like to see some of the Dream Warriors return, and um, I guess they could make a way that Freddy would want to prey on their children. Um, but I don't. I honestly can't think of. And I've thought about this a lot because I've had ideas for Halloween, um, Friday the 13th. I've had ideas for a great way to make a new movie, but Nightmare is one that I've struggled with on how they could bring back certain continuities, and I would definitely want Robert Englund to return if possible. Um, but I've struggled with thinking of a way to start a story other than what I just told you, unless some of them they pretended that they never did die, and Freddy wanted to prey on their children to get back at them. But what about you? What are your thoughts on that?
I actually have a somewhat concept of A Nightmare on Elm Street that kicks around in my head, and it actually follows Dream Warriors. And
Okay.
what it would be the Dream Warriors all sort of including Nancy, would be Ghost, and they would be protecting the dream world, and
Okay.
people would be sort of have Freddy would become a myth, a legend. Like no one even knew whether sort of like Bigfoot or whatever in the town of Springwood. And
Right.
kids more joke about him. They actually do mention his name. They more joke about him. Well,
Yeah.
there was no Freddy Krueger. Oh yeah, there was. So these high schoolers, like 8 of them, we'll say,
Okay.
they get dared to go to the old steel mill where Freddy Krueger supposedly worked, right? The old mill.
Right.
And that's actually where Freddy's biggest strength is. They don't know that, but that's. And the Dream Warriors, they've been holding him off all this time in that dream world. And these kids, they go there and they decide to stay there, stay the night, like idiots. Like seriously. And and they bring a radio. They bring like a battery operated radio, and they start listening to like normal music, okay? And as they're going to sleep, everything starts out fine in the dream world. And all of a sudden, you see Nancy appear. This is where Nancy would get out, wake up. And
Yeah.
it's like, what? Why? Then on the outside, what you do, you'd hear like the radio being played with, and it'd be static. And you'd
Hmm.
hear Freddie laughing, and then a song would start, and the song would be Enter Sandman. Because what was Enter Sandman
Oh,
about?
cool.
Death
Uh-huh.
coming for you in your sleep. And as
Right.
that song's starting to play, Freddie's getting the momentum back, and he starts killing them.
Hmm.
Out of all those kids, only one wakes up alive and runs out of the steel mill screaming and hit that person, that woman who makes it out of the steel mill screaming, spreads the fear of Freddy, causing him to come back. And, for
There's
good.
your sequels.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
so that would be again, it's not the best idea, obviously, but hey, it's an idea,
I think that's a very well thought out premise, much better than mine. So I think that's something that they could really build on and meat on the bones and run with it. I think that's pretty good.
Thanks.
I like that.
Thank you. Uh, is there is there anything you want to add to this?
Okay, let me ask you something. Um, okay, first thing, did you ever see? I think it only came out a few months ago. They uncovered a deleted scene from the original Nightmare on Elm Street where Nancy's mom is explaining a little bit more about they um, why they went after Freddy. Did you ever see that?
Yeah, I did. It basically, what they're trying to say is Nancy went into the dream for revenge.
Hmm.
Not just for her friends, but for her mother. Um,
Right,
at,
because Freddy killed her little brother, and she never knew she had a brother.
right, and that's
Hmm.
I feel that would have I could have seen them using that. I mean,
Hmm.
but maybe they did. Again, you got to look when Nightmare on Elm Street came out. Maybe they
Hmm.
didn't want to do that because Halloween, mind you, had just went the Sister Connection route, not
True.
that long ago. So they might
Hmm.
have not have wanted to copy too much of what Halloween had done.
Hmm.
So,
I understand that, but I personally wish they would have left that in because it explains why her mom was. I mean, of course, the fact that she was a part of the whole vigilante justice thing and killed someone, but I think that would have really been telling of a lot more of what happened between her and John Saxon's character,
yep,
about why she turned into such an alcoholic and why their marriage failed, and why they really struggled, and I thought that would have been a nice thing to add in there. But um, what are your thoughts? Okay, Robert Shea, the head of New Line, um, ultimately because he had the money for the Nightmare on Elm Street, his ending won. Um, Wes Craven and Robert Shea had such a big contention between them about how the original movie ended. Um, Robert Shea was the one that we saw in the final cut where, he wanted to make sure that there were sequels. He believed in this movie so much, that he had that Freddy was still alive and that he killed the mom. And, the T-top or the convertible top was Freddy's sweater and that it took off driving with all of the friends. But Wes Craven wanted it to be that everything was actually just a nightmare and that it had a happy ending, that Nancy woke up and that she went on with her friends, and then the movie ends. How do you feel on that debate? Which version do you like?
I think we're all tore on this. And listen,
Yeah,
before I want to tell everyone this. There's no wrong side of this, okay?
exactly.
Right,
That's exactly right. This is just all opinion.
right. There's no. Look, if you feel one way, you feel that way. It's fine.
Hmm.
I really enjoyed them setting up Freddy to go forward so much. And again, though, too, it's something I've said earlier. It's what you see. So do I blame Wes for filming the? No. Wes created a new nightmare. Created a Nightmare on Elm Street. He created Freddy Krueger. He has every right to feel the way he felt and want that ending. For sure. But I'm glad we got. We may not love every sequel, but I'm glad we got them.
Oh yeah, same here.
I think that's where I stand. I do enjoy the ending we got.
I enjoy both of them. I think if, and as a writer, a lot of times the laziest thing that you can do was like at the end, oh, it was all a dream and it didn't really happen. I think that it made more sense to do it that way, but I'm like you. I'm kind of glad that that you can have both endings, because like if you own this movie on DVD or Blu-ray or whatever, you have both endings on there, so you can pick and choose how you would prefer it to end. But I'm definitely glad that wasn't the end of Freddy. That she realized that she was in a nightmare, and that she took back all the power and all the fear that she gave that made him more fierce and strong. And then poof, he was gone. But I really like that they had the sequels, and that Freddy was still out there, and that he was going to be back. So I'm of two minds on it. I'm fine with it either way. But I really enjoyed it either way. The Halloween series is my favorite horror series overall. But if I could single one favorite horror movie, and it would be the original Nightmare on Elm Street, because I love the whole premise of it, and the fact that you have to sleep, so you have to face Freddy. You don't have any choice, ready or not, he's coming. So I love the original Nightmare on Elm Street. I thought it was a brilliant concept by Wes Craven. And I'm not even the biggest Wes Craven fan. I've seen some of his other movies, and I like the Scream, the Scream movies, and I'm not a big fan of Last House on the Left. That movie was a little extreme for me. I'm not going to say it's a bad movie, but I thought he really made something special with the original Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, Last House on the Left is, if you think a Nightmare on Elm Street is dark, the original Last House on the Left is just as dark.
Oh yeah.
But I agree. I think Wes Craven has done such a, God rest his soul, such a great job with horror. He saved it with Scream in so many ways. But yeah, my favorite, I'm with you. My favorite franchise is Halloween, and my favorite movie is Halloween. But I do enjoy A Nightmare on Elm Street. I do enjoy watching them, and I we both love horror. So, and you sort of get why. Like, there's so much to just sit back and imagine, like, with each character. So there's.
I agree. And my three favorite that I love, my three favorite Nightmare movies, in order, would be the original Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dream Warriors, and New Nightmare. I love Heather Langenkamp to death. She's fantastic. I love the character of Nancy, and she's what keeps me coming back to those three movies. Those are the ones that I watch more than any others. But there's definitely a lot in each one of them for everyone to enjoy.
Yeah. I think, someone once asked me would I recommend the remake. I said, well, and I countered it with a question. I said, well, have you seen any of the others? And they said, well, no. And I said, listen, start wherever you want to. And I think that's, the best answer I can give. You don't have to start with, look, we're all born in different eras or times. So depending on what your age is, you're often going to start different than what, not just I started, but what you started at. It's...
Right.
So start wherever. My message to horror fans is start wherever the hell you want, man.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think I'm older than you are, and I just got into the movies a lot later. So the hype of the remake was what got me into the series, and I love going and watching all those movies in order. And my family never did watch horror movies. We were more into action and sci-fi and stuff. But I was always drawn to horror. But I never really watched it much because that's my parents were not horror fans at all. So I just I didn't really watch it. And that was one of the things that I loved about Dark Shadows when I first watched it was, we had only had cable in my area for a year, and, there was horror, there was, definitely elements of, some sci-fi in there, at least where I started with Parallel Time. That could definitely be a sci-fi concept, and so to me that show just brought the perfect marriage of horror and sci-fi into the mix, and from then on, I kept getting more and more and more into horror, and there's still so many horror movies that I want to watch, but I'm so glad that I got into the Nightmare movies. Now the Friday movies, I know we were talking about wanting to do a show about the Fridays. I only saw the entire series of Friday last year. I just picked and chose certain ones to watch, up until this point. But I decided to sit down and watch all of them last year. So I've got very fresh eyes on those, and I'm looking forward to us getting together and talking about those sometime.
Yeah, definitely. We're gonna have to get together and do a. My hope is, guys, that we get together with there. If we do a Friday the 13th, there's going to be 3 of us, not just 2 of us.
That's great.
3 of us. More insanity, why not? But
exactly.
So that's my hope, guys. That's sort of what we're all like. We're all trying to get scheduled together and do. But I do enjoy bringing you on, man, so much, and I appreciate you coming on sort of at the last moment. I know you're very busy, and
I love it.
I do have a family.
Every time you ask me.
I do have a family suggestion for like your parents and stuff. For Thanksgiving, man, just sit them down and pop in the whole Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Say, look, this is going to be our family time.
There would be mom and dad shaped holes in the wall. They would run screaming. So
nothing like a little fun on Thanksgiving, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
But yeah, God bless, man, and
you too.
Thanks for coming on so much. There's going to be a link in the description box to Mag1981's channel. You can catch him on Twitter at Mag1981 at /Barnabas. I always have fun with my guests, and it's always fun bringing people on who love horror and just have fun with me back. So thanks, man.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.